Hi, I'm Kaylee, and today I want to talk about some moral questions about receiving review copies from publishers and authors. So I have been receiving and reviewing, review copies and advanced reader copies from publishers for years. And somehow I just never quite thought about particular aspects of what that entails and what is okay and what is not okay in some different areas there. Kind of around the edges, as it were, of this issue that I was like, oh, I never thought about that before. Wait a minute. Is that okay? So, the obvious one on the surface is, of course, you would give an honest review. You would really tell what you really think about the book, and I've always done that. When publishers or authors send me a book, they know there is a chance you're gonna get a negative review. Like, if she doesn't like it, boy, she is gonna say so. Sometimes I've given negative reviews and I've had authors ask me to take down that review, and I've refused to do so. Like, that's too bad for you. I told you I was going to do an honest review, and then I did, and if you didn't like it, then I'm sorry about that, but too bad. And I did a whole video several years ago about that particular author. They were a self-published author, and they probably just didn't know any better or something. That is not the norm. Usually, if I do a negative review, most people, especially actual companies like publishers, and most self-published authors, they're very gracious. Even when you didn't like their work, even when you didn't like their book, they're very gracious about it, and they just say, we appreciate your feedback. And that's that. It kind of goes along with this idea of providing information. And my idea is that a negative review isn't always a negative review. For instance, a few years back, Colleen Houck, who is one of my very favorite authors, came out with a new book called Lantern's Ember. And the cover looks really scary. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if I'm up for that. It actually looks like it might be too much of a thriller, scary, horror kind of stuff. And I don't want scary stuff. So I looked on Goodreads and looked up some different reviews. And there was one review where I think the person had given it 2 stars. And they said in their review something about how the cover looks really scary, but they were very disappointed that the book itself wasn't actually scary. And they had wanted something scary. They had certain expectations about the level of horror and fright that they would experience. And then when they were disappointed, they gave it a negative review and gave it 2 stars, and they hated it. But I read that negative review and I thought, ooh, it's not scary. This is perfect for me. So it'll be a little bit creepy, but it won't creep me out too much and give me nightmares. So that supposedly negative review actually caused me to go out and buy the book. And then I read it and I enjoyed it so much, and I think I ended up giving it 4 stars. So I think that's really important to consider when talking about, receiving a review copy and feeling obligated to give it a positive review or something. No. Just as I was thinking and kind of working through my thoughts about this and planning on making a video of it, 2 other booktubers have recently done videos on this very same topic. So I was like, ooh, I'm gonna see what they say. And then that will inform me, or at least maybe give me some ideas and some different perspectives and some different thoughts about what I want to film about it. So one of those videos was from Hannah's Books, and she talked about a kind of an uncomfortable situation she found herself in, not receiving a review book, but a review product. A bookish product, I think it was a book lamp or something, and a company that made her feel very uncomfortable, morally, ethically uncomfortable about this review that she might do for their bookish product. And so she talks all about that in her video, and I found it very interesting. And the other video was actually a response to Hannah's video by Steve Donahue. In his video, he actually gives a lot of really good information about the history of book reviewers. And he talks about how publishers would get reviews for their books into newspapers and magazines and journals and stuff before the internet. Like, what is the history behind this type of interaction between publishers and reviewers? And he does a really in-depth discussion about it that I found so helpful and so interesting. One of the things that Steve Donahue brought up that I thought was really interesting is the wording that we use when we put in our disclaimer. I've always used the wording that I received this book in exchange for a free and honest review. And he said something about how you really shouldn't use that word in exchange, because that kind of has the connotation that you have to do a review. You received the book and now you are obligated to do a review, which really you're not. You can do an honest review if you want to, or you could not review it at all. So using the words in exchange kind of says that because you received it, now you have to provide a service for that. You know, you have to provide a review. Technically, you don't. There have certainly been times when I have received a book for review and I contact the publisher or the author and I tell them, I'm not going to review this. I usually give them a reason saying that this is just not my cup of tea. This is not the type of book that I'm interested in reviewing, or something about the book. Maybe it has nudity, or it has some kind of explicit content, or it has profanity in it. And so I'll say, you know, I'm sorry, I'm not going to review it because I don't want to read that. Recently, I actually had a publisher send me a book that I requested from them. I looked through this publisher's catalog and sent their marketing team or their publicity team an email saying, will you please send me this book? I'm very interested in this book. They very kindly sent it to me for review. And then I ended up emailing them back and saying, I do not feel like I can review this. Even then, I'm still not obliged to review it, even when I requested it. And then when I receive it and I kind of flip through it and I realize, wait, this isn't what I thought it was, and I do not feel that I can review it, that's just too bad for the publisher. They took a chance, they took a risk sending out their product. If it gets reviewed, then yay for them. If it doesn't get reviewed, or if it gets a negative review, then just too bad. That's their risk that they decided to take. And it is an acceptable risk. You know, they factor in the cost of sending out the book. That's a risk that they just take. One of the things that both Hannah and Steve talked about in their videos, and that I completely agree with and that I have always abided by, is that you have no obligation to give a positive review. You have no obligation to include certain words or phrases that the publisher might want you to use. So I have never had an author or publisher or anybody request for me to specifically, you have to give us a positive review. I've never had anybody ask me to do that. So if they did, I would be like, forget you. I don't want to do business with that. I don't need doing business with you. That's not happening. No, no, no. So many times no. Because I don't have an obligation to give you a positive review, but I do have an obligation to give honest and true information to my subscribers. I have an obligation and a trust that is formed between me and the people who watch my videos and read my reviews. And there's no way that I am going to risk, messing that up. Now, one thing that Steve talks about in his video that he says you have no obligation to do, if a publisher asks you to do this, just tell them too bad, which actually I have done a few times in the past, is if a publisher asks you to post your review on a particular day to coincide with the publication date of the book. I think I've only had one company actually ask me to do that. I don't know why that's important to them, but they've asked me a few times, please make sure that, within this 5-day window, that's when you post your review. I think I did that once. And the other times I just kind of ignored it and I just posted whenever I wanted to. So if a publisher asks for a specific date, I don't know that there's necessarily anything wrong with that. Like if they're trying to coordinate their promotional stuff or something, I guess that's not morally wrong, but I still don't have to feel obligated to do that. But if I just happen to think of it and if it happens to coincide with what I was already doing, then sure, I would post on a specific date that they wanted me to post on. I don't really have a super problem with that, but I also don't think that that is a requirement for the review copy or whatever. If it's more like just a nice request or a suggestion, then that's fine. So one aspect of all of this that I literally just never considered until recently is what do you do with those review copies once you are finished reviewing it? And now here's a book, and what happens next with that book? I literally just never even thought of this. Like, this thought never even crossed my mind of what is it morally and ethically correct to do with the book after you're done with it. And that is because I would mostly keep review copies that I liked, or I would give them away to friends or family if I thought that they might enjoy it. Any extra review copies that I received that I did not want to keep for myself, I would donate them to my local library. So, like, it was just never an issue. I was giving them away as gifts, or I was donating them locally, and that was it. But now, because of COVID, my local library is not accepting book donations. They have not accepted any book donations since the beginning of COVID, which means that I have had boxes of books kind of piling up. And after a year, it's gotten to the point where I'm just like, okay, what am I gonna do with these books? But then I started thinking, wait a minute, what if I sold those books? Now, this is not something that I contemplated for very long, because right away I had this kind of icky feeling, just like, I don't know about that. That seems kind of sketchy. I mean, is it okay to receive a book, an advanced reader copy, or a review copy for free from a publisher and then turn right around and make a profit on it and sell it for money? That does not sit well with me. But like you do, you start to think about it and kind of analyze it and think it through. Any way that I tried to kind of think it through and like justify it to myself, it still felt wrong. I haven't sold any books online, I think like since college. I'm not really sure how to do that. So I actually called a marketing company that I've worked with closely for many years. I've talked to them before about all kinds of random questions about reviewing books and about different publishers and, you know, just things in the publishing business and stuff. And they've always been so nice and helpful, and they've always given me really good, very straightforward advice with no nonsense, you know. So I gave them a call and I asked them this question: is it okay? Is it morally, ethically right to sell a review copy that I've received? And they said, absolutely no. That is really not a good idea. It's really sketchy, and it creates a bad relationship between you and the publisher, not to mention between you and your subscribers and the people who read your reviews. It looks like you're doing it just to try to make a profit. And of course, you guys know me, that is not what I'm about. So through all of my meandering thoughts about this, I never had a good feeling about that idea. And I thought, why is it that I have never heard this talked about? Why is it that, I mean, I've seen plenty of videos and blog posts from reviewers talking about the ethics, the morality of reviewing and stuff like that, but I've never heard anybody talk about whether or not it's okay to sell those books. So I thought, well, my goodness, we need to talk about this. We need to just make it clear. Like, this is not okay. And if you were thinking about it, and if you were like wondering the way I was wondering and just kind of exploring this idea, it's really not okay. So I wanted to let you guys know what I am doing instead with all those boxes of books that I don't really want anymore. Like with most moral questions in my life, I asked my dad. He is a preacher, he is a pastor, and you know, they tend to know a lot about morality. So I asked my dad, Dad, what am I gonna do with these books? I don't think it's right to sell them. And he agreed, that's not a good idea. And of course, like the amazingly compassionate person he is, he came up with the idea to donate them to a local orphanage. And there's also a local women's shelter for the books that are not for kids, you know? So all the picture books and the little middle grade books are all gonna be going to a local orphanage, and the books that are for adults I'm going to be donating to a local women's shelter. That really makes my heart happy, first of all, to be helping, you know, these wonderful organizations, and maybe these books will end up in the hands of somebody who will really enjoy them, and it will really mean a lot to them to have that book. There's one other thing that I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to make sure is totally clear just while we're on this subject. I've told you guys many times before, especially around Christmas, that I received this such and such a book for review, and now I'm giving it to my brother, or I'm giving it to my mom, or I specifically requested this book because I know that my niece will love it, or whatever it is. So you guys know, and I talk about this all the time. So I've always been honest about that, but I figured we could talk a little more about it while I'm on the subject. So I think that this is one of those aspects of book reviewing where you're doing it specifically to receive the book for another person, you know what I mean? Like it specifically already with the intention of giving it away as a gift. I think that as long as you adhere to the main moral ideas of giving an honest review and making it thoughtful, then I don't think there's a problem with that. I think it really enhances the experience. The ones that I did receive from publishers and from authors, I was so happy to read a book that my family member had chosen, but then I get to read it, I get to experience it too, and then I get to share it with them. And I get to experience books that I would probably never have chosen for myself. So it kind of widens my reading horizons. And even though that book was chosen for someone else to read and it was someone else that picked it, I still got to experience it and read it and give it a thoughtful review. So everybody comes away happy. Now, I think there might have been one or two where I actually maybe just gave it like 3 stars, maybe 2 stars. I did not give it a super good review because for me, that experience just wasn't that great. Maybe my family member would super love it, but I just didn't. So just because I requested it with the intent of giving it a gift really has no bearing on the actual review that I end up giving it. Now, I will say that if I requested a book specifically for the intention of giving it to someone else, I am going to review that book. I kind of feel like, okay, I do have little bit of an obligation there to actually give it a review. Because, otherwise you could just go around requesting stuff for review and then never review it and then just give it away. And that's not okay. That's not a good way to do it. So in that particular situation where I requested a book with a particular intent of what I'm going to do with that book, then I feel like, yes, I have an obligation to actually review it. So then if I want to give away that product, then, that's okay. I would never request something specifically to give as a gift and then just not review it. That would be dishonest. That would really be underhanded. I would never do that. That sounds awful. That sounds like you're just cheating. That's terrible. And I think that I've gone down so many rabbit trails now talking about this in all its different forms. I'm sure that as I'm actually editing it, I will probably think of 2 or 3 more things that I completely forgot to say. But this is such an interesting subject, I think, and one that can be prone to confusion. So I think that it's important to talk about these things and to just have a real discussion about what is okay, what is not okay. It's just so important to have honest conversations so that everything is open and above board and everybody knows exactly what is going on at all times. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know, what are your thoughts about some of this? This seems like it can be kind of a convoluted subject with a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different specific scenarios about your intention or whether you requested the book, whether it was just sent to you without you requesting it. There's a lot of kind of different scenarios and situations in there. I think that at the end of the day, the important thing is that you do whatever is honest and that whatever you do, you alert people to what you're doing. Please leave me a comment. I would just love to hear you guys' thoughts about this. So I would really, really love to have your input, what you think about this subject. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and remember, the right book in the right hands at the right time can change the world.